Welcome to another edition of the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. I'm Don Grodoff. Along with my wife Gina, we have a practice called Focused Healthy Family, helping families get past the behavior and anxiety issues naturally. We also produce the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, where we are advocates for our own family and others dealing with OCD and anxiety. In the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, we do interviews, provide resources, and information for treatment and support of OCD recovery. We also want to hear from you, your comments, and if you want to tell your story, we want to put it up on the podcast, on our Stories from the OCD side. Our goal in these podcasts is to raise awareness of and advocate for the recovery from obsessive compulsive disorder, better known as OCD. Now, before we get to that podcast, let's hear about our sponsor.
Today I'm here to talk about Q Science's sleep spray. Q Sciences has a number of different sprays. There's a melatonin sleep spray that contains melatonin, 5-HTP, and L-theanine. And we've used other melatonin products to help our children with falling asleep. Melatonin is something that occurs naturally in our body that helps us quiet and calm down for sleep. And yet I really feel like I've seen a difference in the spray versus other products. Our youngest is here to talk about it. What things did you like better about the spray versus the other things?
I don't like the chew tablets because they leave like a weird taste, and they're mainly like they also have like you get bits in your teeth.
Okay, so Q Science's spray.
It's a lot better, I'd say. The taste is pretty decent and it works well.
Okay. I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, or visit invisiblewheelchair.com and find out more information there.
There are a lot of supplement products out there, yet you want one that's of good quality. Check out Q Sciences for your family.
Now, let's get to that podcast. This podcast was recorded January 14th, 2022. And in this podcast, this podcast is podcast number 64, Why Mindset Matters for Your Success. And in this particular case, I think we can easily say that this is also for the success of getting past OCD, getting past anxiety. And we're talking about mindset today. And I deal with this on pretty much a daily basis in my practice, helping people get past their mindset. You know, we've talked before in this podcast about mindfulness, which I think is extremely important. I think mindfulness is the big part of living a more conscious life. And for some of you, that might be kind of an out there kind of thought of consciousness. What does that really mean? Oh, I'm alive, I'm awake, I'm breathing. Well, that's one type of consciousness. We're actually aware of being in the world and a human being. What I'm talking about in this consciousness factor is consciousness of the whole being, of the mind. In other words, with mindfulness, it's about being fully aware of yourself. It's a weird concept in a way, but it's tuning into yourself, finding out really who you really are, what your, the big esoteric kind of thought, who you are in relative to this world, what's your purpose, all of that good stuff. But to be honest with you, in a real nuts and bolts sense, consciousness is about tuning in, listening to yourself. You know, I always say, as far as we're talking about mindfulness here, and we're going to get to mindset in just a moment. But I talk about in mindfulness. Think about this analogy: your car. you have to become mindful of the problems of your car before you can fix them. So when you hear, a noise that you hadn't heard before, or y- uh, some vibration in the car, I'm feeling a little bit of that in my car right now. I'm not driving this moment, but in the car I'm driving today, and I know that I need to get new tires. So it makes me aware of the fact that I need to do something. And I think mindfulness is very important for ourselves to become very aware of what's going on so that we can change it, so that we can step ahead of it, above it. In other words, if we can become aware of a problem, you know, like that when we feel good when we catch cancers early so that we can hopefully resolve them to get past them. So, but I also believe that it's very important to be aware of what goes on in the mind, because that is controlling everything. It's controlling the body, it's controlling the thoughts, the actions, everything. And you want to be able to really be tuned into that, listening to yourself. I talk about a lot with my clients is listening to the messages and the actions that are coming out from you. Because many of the messages are not good. They're negative and they're really working against us. But the problem being a lot of times is that we've had this negative message for years and it becomes a norm for us. So, and that leads me into the idea of mindset. And that's kind of what I was just talking about. A thought, a belief, an action that is so happens so much with you. You've done it so many years that it becomes kind of a set pattern that becomes the norm that kind of goes into the back of the mind where you don't really think about it. So these messages that come up, they can be very negative and they can be from your childhood. And they really set yourself up for how you're going to create your life. They affect you in so many ways. And it's not until you really dig into them that you realize, oh my gosh, I've been thinking this way and doing this for so long. And I can see, once you start getting into it, you can see how it's affecting you then. How it is. When I talk about messages, these thoughts that we go through, a lot of times what I dig down into is the I messages. What I mean by that is the messages that I say about myself, about the situation, about the person, about the place. And I talk about surface messages. And I guess, I can maybe come up with an example here of the idea of, let's say you're an angry person that maybe you're angry and you're really angry at your boss. I've got a terrible boss. I hate him. I don't. But if you dig into that message, you go down like I do in my practice. I do a lot of becauses. Because, or what does that mean to you? How does that affect you? And we dig and we dig and we dig until it gets down to a message. And what happens a lot in my practice is somebody will come up with a message, what I call a surface message. It's kind of doesn't have the I message in it, doesn't have the deeper root message in it, but it brings it to that. And what I mean by that is, so what happens a lot of times in somebody will say something like, "Oh, I did that stupid thing," whatever it is. Well, what I say is, because, well, because and they'll come up with some reason and I'll say, what does that mean to you? And when I keep digging like that, sometimes what I get is they'll just get frustrated with questioning but then the mind will blurt it out. And it'll come out something like, just because I am not good enough, and a lot of times they'll stop in the middle of that statement and go, oh my God, I didn't realize That's really what I'm putting out by that. That surface message says something completely different, but when my mind digs into it, it comes up with the fact that I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or whatever, I don't deserve, or whatever. Those are the I messages that I really dig down, because those are the ones that are tearing us apart. So, and they're part of the mindset. Think about, I always like the saying about mindset. The mind is like concrete, all mixed up and hard as a rock. you know and I don't like to like put that out to somebody, because I don't want, that's not how the mind is. Very fluid. The mind flows between all different kinds of things. It's constantly moving. When it comes to mindset, though, it's what we lock in. And a lot of times we lock it in at a very young age. Those sponge years, and if you want to understand sponge years, I won't go into a lot of it now. I did a podcast about sponge. In fact, I think I did two of them way back, actually. So if you look in the archives and put sponge in there, it'll show you on the invisiblewheelchair.com website. But back in those days, when we're just an infant, we're taking in stuff literally, without filters, without support, without a lot of different stuff. And they become, I call it the bricks of our foundation of our life. So we take this stuff from childhood, and it becomes part of our life. Some and not all bad. Some are good. But there are a lot that aren't good, and they become kind of the mindset. We set it up. And so I want to base this some on a article I read written by a Kendra Cherry. Let me see if I have the website on here. Verywellmind.com. Verywellmind.com. And the article is What is a Mindset? And and what she quotes in here is a Stanford psychologist, Carol Dweck, Dweck, and she talks about, because the title of the podcast here is Why Mindset Matters for Your Success. And this Carol Dweck talks about, could what you believe cause you to, or impact, as she says it, or cause you to be successful or to be failing? And in what I do, in the work I do, the practice I do, I see that combination, actually. People are very successful, but their mindset tells them differently. And they tend to have failing times. Or they can be totally failing, but I don't see those as deep. I don't get into that depressed or that tough of a person. So I believe mindset very much so controls our success or our failure, the way we pattern our life. And what she talks about in this article is she says there's two types of mindset. There's fixed and there's growth. And what she basically says here, that people that have a fixed mindset, they believe that the qualities that they have are inborn, they're fixed, unchangeable. That's just the way it is, I can't change it, kind of thing. And then, of course, the growth mindset is the opposite. They believe they have the ability to develop and grow and change, and of course, we really want to go towards the growth process. That to me is what life is about. Life is about change. When Neil Donald Walsh talks about the fact that every moment is a death and a rebirth, because every moment is different. It may seem the same, and it could appear, but it really isn't. So and she talks about here, what happens if you give kids a difficult problem to solve, and if they have the fixed mindset, then they have a harder time solving it, because they believe that, they have to get it right. It's black and white, all of that. Whereas a growth mindset, they believe in the fact that, okay, so it's tough, but I can get through it. I can make it through it. I can change that. I can come up with an answer for that question, that problem, whatever it is that is set on. So, and I see this all the time, Now, this is how Carol Dweck describes what is your mindset. Number one, people have a certain amount of intelligence, and there isn't any way to change it. Number two, no matter who you are, there isn't much you can do to improve your basic abilities and personality. Three, people are capable of changing who they are. So it goes the other side of it. Four, you can learn new things and improve your intelligence. Number five, people either have particular talents or they don't. You can't just acquire talent for things like music, writing, art, athletics. And six, studying, working hard, and practicing new skills are all ways to develop new talents and abilities. So she just posed both sides of it. The fixed mindset, just can't change it. You got it. What you got now is what you're going to have. And I see it even in my own life that is not true. I have changed careers. Our life is a ever changing flow. There's nothing boring about our life. It's not fun some of the time. I almost said all of the time. That's a mindset there. So, and what she talks about is how you can change that, how you can change some of that. And I like what she says. Can you change your mindset? People with fixed mindset might not agree with this, but I believe it's very true, and I see it in what I do, in the work I do, that I think I've really helped people change their mindset. The tapping part that I do really helps to expedite that. But here she says, for example, instead of telling a child that he is so smart, a parent might commend the child for their hard work on a project and describe what they like the most about the child's efforts. And she gives this example. I really like how you chose the colors for that picture. And it says, by focusing on the process rather than the outcome, adults can help kids understand their efforts, hard work, and dedication can lead to change, learning, and growth. And this is something I found it interesting that was in this article, because it's one of the things that my wife and I teach in our communication course that we do for parents. And when I read this book, and I'll bring up the book, it's called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and Listen So Kids Will Talk. And I probably should do a podcast on it, because the communication skills it teaches within that are adaptable. They're not just for kids. They fit adults, they fit business situations, everything. One of the chapters in the book that really not shocked me, but I'm trying to think of how to put it. I hadn't thought of, I hadn't really put into my mind. It was about praise. And they talk about in the book the effective way of praising somebody. And what they talk about is that telling a child they're a good boy, good girl, it's a good job, or you're so smart, it doesn't really help the child, because more than likely the child's going to react with she's just saying that because that's my mom, or that's my dad, or that's my friend. They don't want to insult me. So they don't really necessarily always believe when you say those kind of things. And so what they talk about in the book is describing what you see, describing what they've done. And I think it's so pertinent to a mindset change is because what happens by just, by simple example they use is something like, when the child cleans their room, instead of saying, "Oh, great job," it's, "Wow, it's amazing. I see you've stacked all your blocks neatly in the corner, and the books are all back on the shelf." Uh, You know, it gives them the feeling of accomplishment for one. Think about it this way. You can call somebody a good boy today, and tomorrow when they're not a good boy, it just negates the good boy thing from the day before. But it never you can't really negate the fact of what they did, but the books on the shelf, all that, that doesn't, even if the books aren't on the shelf the next day, it doesn't negate the fact that they were on the shelf the day before. And so that becomes more effective praise, where the child is then able to say to themselves, "Yeah, that's right. I really did stack those books well. I did a good," to themselves, they're seeing themselves doing a good job. And it becomes much more solid within them. Another thought around that is one of the big principles that we teach in this class for communication, which again I think holds true from mindset, is being allowing a person, a child, but it also can be an adult, to figure things out on their own, to problem solve, to work through something themselves, changes your mindset. Because then they realize that they have been able to accomplish something. They have been able to solve it themselves. And you want that capability, especially in a child, to have a mindset of that I can solve this, that I can answer my own questions. I don't have to follow a leader. I don't have to, I don't have to be told what to do. I can figure it out myself. Because you want a child to be able to think for themselves, to be able to solve and answer things for themselves, and not just follow what you say to do. And I think that goes in line with adults, with work, with whatever. Because when they get out, when the kids get out into the world and they start hanging around with peers, friends, things like that, do you want them just to follow a leader, especially if it's not the best group? Or do you want them to be able to say, "Wow, I don't know if I really want to do that. I don't think that's the right path. I can make my own decision here." So this mindset idea, I think, is vital in changing it, because here's the other part of it. Negative thoughts, negative actions, a negative mindset causes anxiety. Literally, when you're thinking about something, and this is very much layman's way of putting it, but it triggers in the mind when it's a negative thought that there's a problem. This doesn't go, you you know, Esther Hicks talks about going against your conscious self, going against the part of you, the spiritual connection you have, knows where you want to go in life, knows your purpose, knows your direction you want to go. And negative thoughts, if you think about it this way, kind of go against that. They're not thinking towards where you truly deep down in your spiritual sense want to go. It causes conflict, and the mind kicks in and goes, "There's a problem here." And it sets it off into a fight or flight situation. And when that happens, then you've got things going on, that's chemicals in your body, things shutting down in your brain. And I think I talk about that in one of my podcasts, about the fact of how fight or flight works. So thinking about this, a poor mindset, a fixed mindset, and fixed in a really negative way, can lead to anxiety. And that's what, and I think when we're talking about OCD, the mindset is those looping messages that we have to really do the ERP, the exposure, methodical exposure to change, because that's part of the mindset. And so we really have to work on that. And that's kind of going into another whole place on this, but it really is about changing the mind, especially in OCD, because you've got those looping thoughts that are going on that need to change. So again, we really want to work towards the growth mindset. We want to open up and we want to find these messages. And if you look back on the podcast, you can go and look up arm length awareness, which talks about how to listen for, how to find the triggers, these negative triggers, these negative actions, thoughts, whatever. It teaches you because it teaches you how to figure out what these messages are, where, and how to work on changing them, how to catch them, stop beating yourself up about it, and change these the perspective around these negative messages. Not necessarily wiping out the thought, at least not immediately. You can also, if you really want to dig into the tree, I've actually done like a 7-video little course on the arm length awareness, how to become fully aware, which is like the first step in mindfulness. And within a subset of those is the mindset that needs to be changed, which is getting past the triggers, the negative messages. And if you really want to play with that, you can go to armlengthawareness.com. That's ARM and then LENGTH, arm length AWARE. I got it. NESS, armlengthawareness.com. I hope I'm spelling that right, but you can go there and it's free. There's no charge to it. And go through the videos and it'll take you step by step on how to change your awareness by finding your triggers, changing your triggers, and meditating, all of that. A lot of different stuff in it. Good stuff. So I hope this has helped, because mindset does control everything and can make a world of difference in changing it. It can change you both emotionally, mentally, physically. Again, because the mind controls the body. So take these thoughts in mind and work on it. Be compassionate to yourself, though. Don't beat yourself up for it. You have to accept the thoughts to be able to change the thoughts. And you don't want to beat yourself up. You want to be compassionate to yourself. Think about this with mindset. Your mind is not doing this to you to spite you. Oh, yeah, I'm going to throw this one out again and jab him one more time in his anxiety. No, that's not what your mind is about. Your mind it wants to keep you protected, keep you from hurt and harm, all of that stuff. Plus, it wants your body to function well. But it's when you set up the pattern and do something over and over, the way you respond to a situation, and it might be a negative way of responding to the situation, and you do it over and over and over again, the mind locks into that thinking, well, that must be a safe place for this person because they've done it over and over and over, probably since childhood. And so it must be a safe place for him. I'm going to keep him doing that because it is his safe place. So what we have to do is be able to stop not beat the mind up when we realize the trigger. We want to turn back in and talk to the mind and let it know that it isn't keeping me safe. It isn't keeping me from harm or hurt. In fact, it is really hurting me. Maybe when I first did it as a child, this response I did or whatever that's negative, was some way protecting me. but it isn't now. I'm older, wiser, etc. So listen back to the arm length awareness. It talks about that, talks about how to slowly and compassionately change that mindset. I hope this has helped you. Please comment, leave a message, let me know some way, shape, or form what you think about this. It helps me to make podcasts more focused towards what you are looking for. And you can make these comments at www.invisiblewheelchair.com. I appreciate your time today. I'm glad you joined me for this, and I hope it was really helpful for you. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you have a wonderful day doing it. This concludes this podcast. We hope you will subscribe if you haven't already. Remember, we would love your comments, or if you have a story to tell, we want to put it up on the podcast. Simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com to do that. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest, we love guests. So simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com and contact us from there. Gina and I are here to help you or your family get to a better place naturally. Simply visit focusedhealthyfamily.com for more information. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Keep tapping and focusing forward for a better way.